Wake that ass up.
In the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ MV, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the God, Tess as well. She's been here the last 2 days, so you part of the Breakfast Club.
Yes.
Bring her up here. We got some special guests joining us today. Tess is back again, and we also have Nadia Hallgren. Welcome.
Thank you.
And, of course, attorney Ben Crump, who has a new documentary called Civil. That's out June 19th. Well, good morning, guys, and thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you, King, for having us.
Now, for people that don't know, break down what is Civil, what it's about, and tell us all about it.
Certainly, Angela Yee, I am always in awe of you, so I say that publicly.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Civil is a Netflix documentary coming out on Juneteenth. It was directed by the young, brilliant director, Nadia Hallgren, this African, Puerto Rican, all kind of flavors in there.
Give it up for Nadia.
Thank you.
She did Becoming also.
Yeah.
And she did Ida's Fighting Words, Ida Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you so much.
I mean, she is it. I mean, she's that sister. Her vision is so incredible. I mean, it followed me for 18 months from March all the way until the 18 months concluded during a pandemic where we had not heard of George Floyd when they started filming. We had heard of Ahmaud Arbery, but hadn't heard of Breonna Taylor at the time, and she is capturing all this footage intensely while we're dealing with these families and so many other things like banking while black, environmental racism, fighting for the black farmers, and she, more than anybody else, just understood the moment. I mean, when people watch this documentary, hopefully they will understand this isn't just a documentary for today. This is a documentary, as Kenya Barris and I, who's the producer, created Black, has said, this is a documentary for our children yet unborn.
I'm so glad you're here because there was a call that we got. I don't know if you were here, MV, last week, but somebody called in. They were talking about Larry Nassar and how there's this lawsuit against the FBI because of Larry Nassar and how they knew about the cases against him, but they didn't act on it. And somebody called in and they were like, well, this is disgusting. What is money going to do? Why do victims need money if they're truly victims? And this is just a money grab. So I know this is something that you as a civil rights attorney can speak to. So I would love for you to talk about that. When people try to say, oh, they're just trying to get some money, or he's just chasing money and trying to fatten his wallet.
Yeah, you know, I try not to listen to the haters much because I understand my mission. And my queen Tez, she say, no, you got to go back out on Crump. I'm like, I don't have the time because I'm so focused on the mission. The mission is trying to say to people psychologically and consciously to American society that, no, we matter. We deserve equal justice. When you have a wrong against us, we have a right, not only based on the 7th Amendment of the United States Constitution, but just based on common sense. We have a right to send the message that you can't do this to us and get away with it. I'm representing a lot of black and brown people in Los Angeles County at McLaurin Hall, which was a children's shelter in Los Angeles for 50 years. Black and brown children were being raped and sexually molested, and the county just looked the other way.
Right.
It's been all these years, and now California, because of things that were happening in Boy Scouts and the Catholic Church said, we're going to give you 3 years. Anybody who was molested and those things when you were 7 or 8 years old, you have a right to come forward. Think about those people. Yeah, the only thing you can get is money. You can't go back and give them their innocence back.
Right.
But when you have that civil compensation, it makes the county pay, it makes the corporations pay, and those type of things. And like we say on the trailer of Civil, if anything America understands, it's money.
Capitalism.
It's capitalism 101. And when you start making people pay, then they change their conduct, or you keep going until it becomes financially prohibited for them to be able to afford to treat black people and brown people like second-class citizens.
Now let me chime in on that though, right quick, because he gave you the Martin. I always say I'm Malcolm and he's Martin.
Tez, before you go.
Yeah, because you know I'm about to go there on the money thing.
I want you to go there because a lot of times people don't have the knowledge, right? So sometimes people call here, or I see articles and they say Attorney Benjamin Crump is an ambulance chaser, right? He chases just to make money or to fatten his pockets, right? And when Tez came up here, she spoke so eloquently about you don't solicit anybody.
Yeah.
People have to reach out to you, and many times people reach out to certain other attorneys or anybody else, and nothing gets done.
Yeah.
And they don't see it get done until you step on the stage.
500 calls a day.
So now now talk your shit.
Yeah, I'm about to talk my shit. So to the Dumbos in the comments, I'm speaking directly to them. And again, this is not a reflection of Attorney Crump. These are my own statements. When people say it's all about the money, first of all, that makes no sense. Only 5% of Attorney Crump's cases are police brutality. That's number one. Nobody talks about the $100 million lawsuits that he's been able to get for folks who are alive and well, the $600 million lawsuits he's been getting alive and well. America, or any government, has never paid for the value of black life. And so I find it amazing that the same people in the comments that will sue McDonald's for a slip and fall feel that it makes no sense if someone takes your life and you feel that family should not deserve compensation for their children that's been left behind. What are they supposed to do? Exchange Roman noodles like in the pen? The only thing we have is the money compensation. But to ignore the fact that Attorney Crump pushes for the criminal punishment, to ignore the fact that policy actually comes out of these cases, when you talk about the Breonna Taylor law, when you talk about the Andre Hill law, when you talk about 100 cities that have now enacted police reform since the murder of George Floyd, it has been because Attorney Crump and a few others, and I'm saying a few just to be generous, have brought these cases to light. There are billions of dollars every year that are settled based on police brutality. I ask people, why is it that your local attorney and your hometown never wants to take these cases? Why is it? It's certainly not for a lack of advertisement. Every commercial you hear every day is if you've been injured in an accident, if you've been injured in an accident. So why don't they take those cases, Angela? That's the question I ask people. Why don't you see them? Well, the answer is, in which you point this out in the film, they do not want to upset their DA. They don't want to upset the governor. They don't want to upset their chief of police. They do not want to be blackballed and send the death threats for pennies. And I'm going to say this, and I'll be quiet. When you look at these cases that Attorney Crump takes, or any civil attorney, these cases take years, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. You don't earn $1. So I would ask anybody in the comments, are you willing to work for 40 hours a week for 3, 4 years straight? Maybe not get compensation at the end. It just makes zero sense. It doesn't add up. The math doesn't math. So when you hear those comments, ambulance chasing, no. Everybody say that to us, their loved one in the ambulance. I'll use one story, Monroe Bird, a case I worked on in 2015. The stepfather, Monroe Bird, said, I don't want Ben Crump, because the family called me first because their son was being dragged all through the media. They called me first and said, I don't want Ben Crump. I don't want none of that coming down, because he's an ultra-conservative. Tulsa, Oklahoma, ultra-conservative. Black man, but a conservative. But once his son started getting dragged in the media, then it was, can you call Attorney Crump? Because nobody was willing to stand and change the narrative. The narrative that is changed in the media affects the jury. It affects how they make those decisions. And so now, 7 years later, they're passing the Monroe Bird law. And that's the stuff that people don't keep up with.
Does that discourage you at all when you hear that? Because you like, no matter what, you out there to do good, right?
Yeah.
And then so when you got people that look like you, when it's the white folks, sometimes you understand.
Yeah.
But when it's people that look like you, that you're fighting for, and they go at you, does that discourage you at all?
You know, Envy, I try to be a student of history. Thurgood Marshall is my personal hero. You know, Martin and Malcolm, these are the people I emulate. Even Shirley Chisholm and Fannie Lou Hamer. People don't understand that they were hated mostly by black people. People hated Martin Luther King. People hated Thurgood Marshall. Black people. You know, we have this revisionist history now that everybody loved them. But when they were at their peak, they were the most hated people in America by both white and black people. And so I always try to remember that and say, you know, you have to stay focused on your mission. You look in the mirror and say, God, I know what mission you put on my shoulders, and I'm going to use these blessings, these influences to try to affect a better world for our children. And I'm never discouraged by anything. As we said in the film, I'm not saying I got all the answers. I'm not trying to say I'm the smartest guy in the room. what I'm saying is, don't be a spectator. If you feel you can do something, get in the arena. It shouldn't just be me and Tez and Nadia in the arena fighting. Do something. Just don't be a critic. The easiest thing in the world to do is to sit home and be a critic and don't do anything else. The hero is the person who puts themselves out there, risk their reputation, their family safety, and even their life, and say, this is about more than just me. And I just echo what Tez said. You know, we have these banking while black cases where we have recovered millions, hundreds of millions of dollars for black people.
Over 200 million to be exact. Let's put the number out there so they can know in the comments.
And it's so astonishing to me, Envy and Angie, that people would say, oh, it's just about the money. What do you think banks and corporations are doing things for? Are they doing it just for charity? Are they doing it just because they had nothing better to do? No, they're doing it for the money. And so when we take on Wells Fargo, who we're currently fighting now because they were denying black people mortgages, I mean, during a pandemic where the government had gave an opportunity, and I digress. I got to say this, y'all.
Absolutely.
During the pandemic, because they were worried about the economy, the government gave historic incentives to decrease the interest rate for home loans lower than they had been in 75 years. Y'all understand, for poor people, middle class people, the quickest way to gain wealth and equity is to be able to purchase a home and pass something on to your children and their children. That's how you get wealth accumulated. Well, even with all of this, Wells Fargo was denying black people. White people were getting incredible incentives to increase their wealth by saying you got a 2% interest rate that will make it, you might save $1 million to $2 million just because you were able to refinance. They said no to black people. And so now I can worry about the Negroes in the comments, so I can go say, no, Wells Fargo, you probably stopped black people from getting $1 billion in equity. So guess what Ben Crump gonna do? I don't care what you say, I'm going to get those black people that $1 billion.
But and also, isn't it interesting? The people in the comments also push reparations. So people understand what money is and the income gap, the wealth ratio with black folks. But for some reason, when it comes to actually doing it, making the claim that folks claim they're going to do, which is making the claim, filing the motion, filing the lawsuit, actually getting the money, then all of a sudden people get confused on the value of money. So I tell people, are we pushing for reparations for money to get in people's pocket, or are we not? And I don't know if it's jealousy, envy to see a particular family that benefits and maybe others don't feel, it didn't affect them. I get that. I feel that. And that's why we continue to talk about policy. But to lie on this man, we are opposite, as you can tell. Our personalities are opposite. I don't agree with everything Attorney Crump does or how he does it at all. He tells you give me the most unsolicited advice than anybody. But to lie on somebody, that's the problem that I had. To say he's never won a case is a lie. To say that, he's selling folks out because they can't get the criminal conviction. He's not the criminal. He's not the DA.
He's a civil.
You should be talking to your DA to say, it's just about the bag. And after that, they don't do nothing else. Challenge these families. I said on Friday, these families should be doing like Trayvon Martin's mom does, like Breonna Taylor's mom does, like Sarita and Tara with the George Floyd family, they do. They continue to push for these issues. The families can also say something. It's not just on Attorney Crump.
And we get to see that in the documentary when you talk to the families, right? And you're letting them know, because the press can be your enemy, or they can actually help elevate what it is that you're trying to get out there and let people know. Yeah. And so when you have to talk to these families and let them know, okay, a lot of them have been in the spotlight, have never been in the spotlight before, and have never had to get on that podium and speak to these issues and talk in front of a large group of people. And a lot of times they go on to become activists. So what is the process? Because you do get 500 calls at least a day, right? For people who have something that happened and maybe they don't have access right now to a Ben Crump. But if something happens, how do you use the press to elevate your story?
That's one of the things Nadia talks about in the film, because there are 1,300 people who get killed by the police every year. And we're on a record-setting pace this year after George Floyd, and that's truly heartbreaking because you thought George Floyd was going to be a turning point. But we only know about 5 or 6 of those families.
Right.
And that is because we're doing everything in our power to strategically frame the narrative. Because as we also say in the film, Silky Slim, one of my investigators, Silky explains it very thoroughly. We have to go out there and we're in a race against the police to frame the narrative. Because once the police frame the narrative, it's like Ted said, when Monroe Berg and them happened, no, we don't want Crump and these race baiters and so forth. But after the police framed the narrative and had his son looking like the worst person in the world, please, Ben Crump, please, all you activists, Tez, Tamika, y'all come and help us, because now they saw that the system chewed them up and spit them out. And so then just like with Breonna, I mean, a month had passed and nobody was talking about Breonna. Lanita Baker, a great African-American sister who's a lawyer in Louisville, Kentucky, said, Ben, nobody seems to care. I started calling everybody I knew, especially every black woman I called, Oprah, Gayle King, everybody saying, y'all, this is a black woman. If we don't stand up, we can't ever say anything. And I mean, I'm begging the media, hey, cover the story. And they saying like, well, a black woman got killed by the police who was executing the search warrant. Why is that an important story, Ben Crump? And I'm like, because she was a nursing student. She was working 2 jobs. She had no criminal history. The police, based this all on innuendo.
At home in her
evidence.
bed, sleeping.
In bed. And I mean, it was like a yeoman's effort to get people just to start talking about Breonna Taylor. I called Tamika Mallory. I said, hey, Tamika, you're a black woman activist. I don't want to call any male to be the leader and fight this thing, because we have to empower people too. And that's what I always try to do with all these young lawyers I work with in every city. I always try to say, no, give them the mic, give them some time, because I'm okay. I don't ever want it to be just about me. It's a team effort. We all in this together, and if we can't do it together, we probably gonna lose every time.
Right.
But when we unite and you build coalitions and we win in the court of public opinion, then it affects the court of law, and that's why the media is so important. Anytime I think about the Buffalo 10, how I'm fighting for those black people who were killed by that white supremacist, DJ Envy, half America done forgot about those black people.
Right.
I'm fighting to say, no, we can't forget about those black people. And I'm following Ted's advice, even though everybody telling me, no, Ben, make it about anti-white supremacy hate crime bill. Ted saying, nah, Ben, you for black people. Why can't we ever say anti-black hate crime bill? They did it with the Asians. They do it with everybody else. But when you say black, everybody say, oh, that's too controversial. Well, I guess I'm going to die controversial.
And even with George Floyd, if you look at how they try to frame him after what happened to him, and how in the media, if you look on like, well, he was this person and he was, I'm like, what does that even?
Let me give you a real example just quickly, because I want you to get a real example on why it matters with the media. If you go back and look at that case, Derek Chauvin's case, remember when the witnesses got on the stand? The white woman got on the stand, the brother got on the stand, and he said, I knew it wasn't right. I knew what was happening wasn't right. How else do they know that if these other cases had not been in the media? Yeah. That's the part that people are not understanding. This, literally, you are influencing future jurors. So the way Nadia has beautifully laid it out in the documentary to show like what happened 10 years ago, 12 years ago, all of this has made an impact so that now people are more aware. And when they go in that jury box, when they are a witness, that's what made them folks take out those cameras. That's what made them actually say something's not right here. Had they never seen it on TV, it wouldn't have never happened.
Well, Nadia, let's talk to you, because this is a spicy room. If you haven't seen it,
I see it. I'm a quiet filmmaker in the corner, as always.
So let's talk about you directing this and what made you want to do this film.
Like most of us, I was sitting home during that time when everything was happening in America, the pandemic, George Floyd's murdered, and I'm like, I'm a filmmaker. I need to be out there doing something, and I needed a way to focus the story. And then I get a call from Kenya Barris, and he's like, I've been working on something with Ben Crump. We want to make a documentary. Do you want to get involved? Becoming with Michelle Obama had just come out like a month prior to that. And I was just like, this is what I've been asking for. So grabbed the camera and just got on the road with Ben. And I just knew that this was a moment to document history and what was happening in America. And just to what Angela was saying, it was important for us to really pull back the curtain on the Ben Crump strategy. It's not a secret. It's intentional. Everything Ben does is intentional. It's orchestrated. It's thought out, knowing that, just like what Ben says in the film, if there's not someone there to say, this happens, then the next thing we do is a press conference, then we're going to get the activists out in the street, everyone's name's forgotten.
Yeah, it has to be a strategy. I saw you were like, okay, he played chess. Make sure you put that out there as a young black man, as a black man that plays chess.
Yeah.
Like, that's important to put that, because they'll try to frame it a whole different way. You got to put that positivity out so you see a human being. And you also show Ben Crump's family, his mom.
Yes.
Now, why was that important in framing this story?
One thing I thought was so special when I met Attorney Crump was just who he is as a person, as an individual, his values, which everything that people talk, we know, if you know Ben Crump, his values are just, at the highest standard, and where that came from. So it's really important for us to show people that he's a man who was raised a certain way and has life experience that brought him to where he is right now. And all those moments that also, it added a level of humor to the film. The film is very heavy, but we also wanted to give an audience an opportunity to go on the same ride that we went with Ben. So we included all those parts.
Was that hard for you to expose that part of your life? Because that's not something you ever do.
It's very hard to expose your personal life. I will say this. My mom was here at the Tribeca Film Festival premiere, and we grew up in the projects. My mother raised me and my two brothers and her baby brother, working 2 jobs. I mean, doing everything for us. And it was so beautiful for my mother to see what she did. I mean, a standing ovation. And then out in Times Square, they got Netflix really has invested in this movie. And they have a billboard 80 foot off the ground on 42nd and Broadway. And for my mama to say, we started in the projects and now we're here. I mean, it's just a testament to a strong black woman.
Absolutely.
Who's saying, I won't let this world destroy my children. And so that was, my mom and my wife, my daughter, everybody in this film, they just kept it real. They kept it too real.
How's your family deal with it? Because it's it's like anything else. I mean, if you could just take all the negativity, it's all good, but it bleeds into your wife, it bleeds into your kids, and then Tez was talking the other day about the death threats.
Yeah.
So how does your family deal with it? How are they okay?
It's hard. Obviously, as adults, we understand what we're doing. My 9-year-old daughter watched the film for the first time yesterday, and she said, "Daddy, you got a death threat?" And she was very concerned about it. And
9 years old.
9 years old, brilliant little princess, who's my boss, by the way. Brooklyn Zeta Crump. Yeah, that's Brooklyn. My girl. And so we had that conversation about, baby, Daddy's out here fighting for you to have a better world. And sometimes people don't want to see our black children have an equal opportunity at life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And I said, like I told you, we have to fight for our rights. We can never take stuff for granted. And she was like, but you didn't do anything wrong. I said, baby, I know that. And you will learn that some people feel that they're superior to us because the color of their skin. And that's always a difficult conversation to have with young people because they want to see the best in the world. And we have to teach them all this ugliness. She was asking me questions. Man, she is terrified by these school shootings.
I think we all are.
But for your children to have to deal with that trauma, what happens, Daddy, if it happens in our school? So we talk about those things. I think about how my wife, my brothers, everybody, in their mind, they are prepared that it could happen, and we have to protect your family when you're on the road so much. I mean, they're constantly checking on them and everything. And that's the other side that Tez was talking about. My law partners now, we don't make that much money doing police brutality. We make our money from doing mass torts and class action work, stuff that, is going up against these corporate titans. This police brutality, civil rights work, It's something you do because you care.
Right.
Nobody does civil rights work to get rich. I'm going to say that again. Nobody does civil rights work to get rich.
People assume that civil rights work gets millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars.
DJ Evie, they're less than 5%. It's the least profitable division in my law firm. And I pray, man, I really do. I pray so much that we can close down the police brutality division of the Ben Crump law firm, because then that would mean, Trayvon will get to live because somebody didn't profile him, that Breonna Taylor would get to become a nurse because nobody, lied on a probable cause affidavit. Ahmaud Arbery. I mean, all these young black people in the film. Nadia has a part in a 15-year-old, a 18-year-old, and a 19-year-old in a week's time. All get killed by the police, completely unjustified. But, if we could somehow have them look at our children like they look at their children, then our children would get to live. And that's what I pray for, man. That's what I'm fighting. I've made enough money. I'm going to be okay. My law firm would rather I just stop doing the civil rights. They like, you did enough, Crump. We can make money a lot easier and more of it if you would just quit doing this civil rights work. But I'm like, then I would be selling out my soul. No, it's about fighting for our children, man. And I don't care if anybody will get it. I don't care about the critics or anything. I know who I'm fighting for. I look at my little girl. I look at young black and brown children. I say, they worth the fight. They are so worth the fight, Envy.
Absolutely. So I know you guys got to go, so I'm going to ask the last question to you, Nadia. What's the biggest takeaway that you want viewers to get away or to have after watching this documentary or movie?
What I hope, Envy, is that when people watch this film, that they have a much deeper, nuanced understanding of what life is like in our communities than they ever had before. And that they understand the work that Attorney Crump does. And, something we spoke about earlier, just this idea that civil law and criminal law are actually two different things. Right. And we were surprised in this film when we showed it to people and they didn't understand it. And even highly intelligent, educated people were confused. So we really tried to drive that point home. So just to give people a basic understanding of how the law works as well. So it's an educational tool. Yeah. But it's really to bring people in and show behind the scenes of what these cases are really like, outside of the press conferences and the news cycle.
Tez, you want to curse anybody out? Anything else you want to say?
I don't think I want to cuss anybody out.
You got to have the final word.
Tez with the final word.
No, I just think I'll just echo,
Can I say this before
sure.
she say the final word? It is important that people understand civil law and criminal law.
Yeah.
Because the prosecutors, I think, intentionally sometimes lose these cases. We have never lost a police brutality case, but people sometimes can't distinguish the two. And so I think Nadia does a good job of reminding people of what we should have learned in 7th grade civics class, that the government is the only people who can prosecute you and put you in jail. And then the 7th Amendment says if you've had a wrong that you believe has been put upon you, you have a right, based on the 7th Amendment, to sue them. And if the jury agrees with you, you are entitled to compensation. And the law has some reason for that, because they don't want people trying to solve their disputes in the street by shooting and killing one another. No. You come to the court of law, and if a jury agrees, then the only thing we can give you is monetary damages.
That's the accountability.
That is the accountability.
And before Tez gives her final word, I do want to say that I know you've been inspired by Thurgood Marshall and you speak on it all the time, but I feel like after seeing this, kids will be inspired by you. And that's the thing that will make the next generation want to become active, become attorneys, become civil rights attorneys, and make sure that they do what's right and support that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Angela.
And I would say what you said and what you said, Nadia, as well. I think the school system should change, right? And the reason I say that is I think a lot of things that we learn in school, I think times have changed and the schooling hasn't changed, right? So I think that, financial literacy should be taught in school at a young age, right?
Oh, yeah.
If my 9-year-old or my 8-year-old can tell you about, loans, interest rates, and all that, they see it from daddy, they should be able to learn that.
Wow.
I think real estate, the fact that home ownership, you talked about it earlier. I think we should teach kids about home ownership early, about interest rates, about saving, about what an FHA loan is, and this early. Maybe not at 3rd grade, but at 7th, 8th grade, absolutely. And also their legal rights.
Yeah.
I think we should talk about it early. A lot of times, the best thing as far as my dad being in my dad raising me was he was a police officer, retired police officer.
Yeah.
So the first thing he would say is, if you ever get pulled over, you never say anything. You call me first.
Absolutely.
You say nothing. I don't. And the second thing he always said was, you can't beat them in the street. Get home, and then we could beat them.
Except you might reach for your phone and get shot. So that's the only thing when
Yeah,
you try to call.
you're right.
That's
Right,
it's,
but that's what he always said. But these are some of the things that we should learn, because some of the things civil and criminal, a lot of times people don't know. They don't know. And you said, older people seen it, and they still didn't know. Yeah. And these are things I would love to change our school system, because I think these kids need to learn these things.
Absolutely. And I'll say this for Tez go, Angie. No,
I'm not gonna get my word in.
It's kind of deep, and you don't think about these things when it's happening. I'll never forget, we were down at the Trayvon Martin annual dinner, and they were honoring Harry Belafonte. And he said something I thought was so profound. He said, Ben Crump, you have made civil rights law in vogue again. He said, he was with Dr. King and them, we got the Civil Rights Act and so forth that gave people opportunities to go out and do things. And everybody went for money. Everybody went to the corporate law. Nobody was doing civil rights at all. And he said, but you, with Trayvon, you help remind people that they can do civil rights law again too and be popular doing it. And I thought that was kind of profound to hear him say that, because he watched the whole transition. You fought, you gave all the black people the opportunity to do whatever, and they then stopped doing the thing that got us here. I mean, there was no civil rights lawyers coming up like Thurgood Marshall when I was in law school saying, no, go do civil rights law. They said, go get the corporate job, go be a prosecutor, whatever. And I just remember coming from the projects, watching the police beat up on black people. I'm saying, hey, man, I want to go to law school and fight that.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's right. You know how discouraging it is when you have to go in court in front of that prosecutor and not have proper representation.
Oh, my God.
And then you take a plea deal because you don't think that you can beat something, because you don't feel like going through it. You don't have the money. You feeling like, I don't want to go to trial because I'm going to lose. Like, all of those things go through people's minds, and that's why they make certain decisions.
Yep.
But it's so important to have great lawyers and great representation.
Absolutely. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Tez, you want to close this out? Tez?
I'll close and say,
It's on you, Tez. A lot of pressure.
I drank a sip of the positivity water, so I will leave on a positive note. Envy, start encouraging me to be cuss folks out. I will say this, and I talked about this in my last Breakfast Club interview on my Push the Line training that's coming up, Politics Until Something Happens. I want to give a quick shout out to text 66866, push the line to 66866. What is that about? It is about getting in the fight. What people should get from this documentary at the end is Ben Crump says, get into the arena. I know who I am, and I know whose I am. Amen. And what does that really mean? You got 3 ways to get involved. Now, you can just be in the comments, or you can get involved on the criminal side, to push for that folks get arrested, to push to end qualified immunity, like what happened in New York City, by the way, like what happened in Colorado, by the way. You can talk about making sure folks get arrested. You can talk about the protest side. You can talk about the punitive damages side, which is what Attorney Crump does. Or you can talk about the policy, which is what I talk about, which is over 100 cities have passed some level of police reform that nobody talks about. Yeah. We still have to push on the federal level for the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, but over 100 cities have made some difference. The bottom line is you have every opportunity to be involved. My logo, Push the Line, it has each person pushing, one pushing the P, the U, the S, and the H. Nobody's paying attention to what's going on beside them. There's a child on the side that is watching with their fist up, watching what it is that we're doing. So you can push or you can talk. in the Bible, whether you are a believer, and I'm only talking to the believers, it says that at the end, we talk about who's the GOAT, who's the GOAT, who's the GOAT, who's the greatest of all time. We love throwing that around in hip hop. But in the end, there is going to become a time where the GOAT will be separated from the sheep. What is the sheep? People say the sheep is who follows and who does what man does. But in the word of God, it says that the sheep is about the shepherd's business. So you are either going to be about for the least of these, or you going to be one of the GOAT that are not here to serve those who have been in prison, to serve those who have been disenfranchised, to serve those who have been marginalized. And when it's time to make that accountability, and if I'm wrong, then I don't have nothing to worry about. If I just disappear into existence, fine. But what if I'm right, DJ Envy? If I'm right, there's going to be the question, what did you do? And the answer won't be, well, I was in the DM. I told Ben he should do this. I told Tezlyn she should. What did you do for the least of these? You've been challenged right now to do something. One of those 3, 4 things. Don't worry about what Ben doing.
Yeah.
Get in the arena and get your squab on. It's plenty of people that's talking from the stands. We talked about that Friday. Everybody at the game. But guess what? We don't all play the same position. I've never once seen LeBron James turn around to the stand and say, what y'all think I should do? Should I go this or this? Attorney Crump got to focus on playing the game. And then you got people like me that's on the sideline, on the bench, cheering them on. Let's go, let's go, let's go. I was a cheerleader all through school. My job was to say, let's go, but to also challenge at the same time, say, Attorney Crump, I don't really like that. I'm not feeling that. But I'm on the court in the game. Yeah. So if you just in the stands talking, let's start walking and let's be about our business.
There
Peace.
you go. Civil is out this Sunday, Father's Day, June 19th, Juneteenth. Definitely check it out, and we appreciate you guys for joining us.
Hey, hashtag Civil in Twitter.
And there's only one phone call that when they call, we always come to work and open up, and that's when Attorney Benjamin Crump calls. It doesn't matter if we on vacation, if it's a pandemic, if none of the workers, if Angela Yee's out, I'm out, Charlamagne's out, you get here.
Yeah. Hey, Envy, we love you, King.
We love
Angela
you.
Lee, y'all are the voice for our people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.